It's brand new, and it's the very same plane that I learned to fly 3D with. But how does it stack up to our review system? Hey there, I'm John, this is Two Brothers RC, and this is the E-flite Night Timber X Evolution. I bet you're saying the same thing I'm saying right now. It's about damn time that this bird got updated, and wow, what a difference it makes. As someone who spent months practicing 3D in early 2021 with the original Night Timber X, I really appreciate all of the updates that Horizon made to get this plane up to spec for 2025 standards. We'll cover all of that in the review, but for our overview here, this thing flies very similar to the original Night Timber X that I flew so long ago, with all of the quirks that you'd expect, but with a lot of great updates to make it even more enjoyable to own and operate. And we'll talk about those upgrades at the back end of the video, but for now, let's dive right into this awesome little bird and see what she's capable of. The Timber X is a great platform for learning 3D. It's what I learned to fly 3D with, and while it's not, admittedly, the easiest plane to fly 3D with, part of the challenge of model aviation is learning to fly outside of the box, not just flying the easiest airplanes out there with the lightest wing load. While yes, that is fun and it does have its place, it can be really challenging and very rewarding to fly a plane that can keep you on your toes when you push it, because the Timber X will push back. If you've been around the model aviation community for a while, one of the common misconceptions about the Timber X is that it's trying to be STOL and 3D, that it can't do either very well. I think at one point I may have agreed, but I've grown to appreciate the Timber X because it built so many of the foundations of my 3D skill set. While yes, admittedly, there are other planes that certainly fly a little better, nerd. This plane is absolutely 3D capable, as you can see on screen, and it's also STOL capable too. Not everything has to come with a beginner level wing load of 4.2069 to be fun. Sometimes the challenge can come from a plane forcing you to fly better. In my view, the best trainers are the planes that require you to improve as you keep flying them. That's why they're called trainers, because they train you to fly better. And that's why I make a distinction between trainers and beginner planes. But that's a story for another time. So with that in mind, we'll be reviewing the Night Timber X Evolution using our review metrics designed with 900mm to 1.3 meter airplanes in mind. And starting with agility, as always, we begin by checking for whether the airframe is prone to accelerated stalls. Fortunately, it isn't, and it does actually take a bit of work to get it to stall while throwing it around. Because it has so much thrust, it's really hard to get into a bad situation with it that you can't simply power out of, passing our first checkpoint. It doesn't really seem to fight the inputs that I'm giving it, though it is a bit squirrely at times. By this, I mean that sometimes you'll throw it into a maneuver and it does whatever you tell it to. Other times, it won't tumble like I expect it. The Timber X has always been speed dependent for how well it performs certain maneuvers. If you want it to be consistent, make sure you practice with it and it should perform nicely, passing this checkpoint with ease. The next checkpoint looks for high thrust, and it certainly has that. Note that I said high thrust, not high speed. You can have high thrust without high speed. It's fast, but it's no speed demon. The thrust is centered squarely on the low end of the speed range, which is where you need it to be for really throwing it around and getting out of sticky situations that one might find oneself getting into. And the Timber X passes yet again. Funny enough, the next checkpoint looks for Harriers that are free of wing rock. I'm actually convinced that Horizon had the wings re-engineered on this plane a little because it actually does really good Harriers without the flap mixing that I used to use to get it to behave. And it's not just in wheeled flight that it behaves either. In fact, it's even better with the floats installed. I was able to tour the lake with absolutely no issues at all, even in wind and even without that flap mix that I used to work with. I'm actually really impressed by this because the Timber X used to never do clean upright Harriers. It's something that definitely feels much different about this version of the plane, and no, I'm flying without the slats. They'd probably make it perform worse for 3D, which is why I didn't install them. Even throwing the plane into a snap roll and immediately commanding a Harrier was really clean. Horizon got this one right. I'm impressed. The Timber X passes this checkpoint too. Now, XA, or Extreme Aerobatics, means different things to different people. What I'm looking for with this metric is whether something can pop-top, do some tumbling, and flip around and look cool. I'm sure that some 3D purist gatekeeper out there thinks that I'm totally wrong and that this plane isn't capable of XA, but guess what? This is our channel, these are our metrics, and the Timber X meets them as far as we can tell, passing with a 5 out of 5. Flight time! Oh boy, my, and by extension, your favorite section to talk about. So how did the Timber X perform here? Well, on Spectrum Pro Air 2900 and 3600 batteries, I hit not just 3, 4, 5, 6, but an average of over 7 minutes of flight with a mix of aggressive 3D and various other maneuvers like one-wheel touch and goes, hovering, grabbing the plane and throwing it again, etc. Normal Two Brothers RC stuff. The plane definitely had no issues getting to the 7-minute mark, which earns the Timber X a 5 out of 5. I'm starting to see a trend here. Let's see if it holds. Onward to the landing gear, traditionally the weakest part of any timber, or so say the people who land like a meteor, and then wonder why things broke. The timber does come with functioning wheels that are soft. They're not super squishy, but they absorb impacts, and that's what I'm looking for in this metric. If they're rock hard, the suspension takes the full brunt of the impact, but these wheels actually do deform on hard landings, which helps absorb some of the impact, passing both of our metrics here. Now, this next checkpoint would look for stiff suspension, as in I'm expecting the suspension to be stiff. That's because these metrics we're using were designed for smaller 3D only planes, not a STOL 3D hybrid, so I can't ding it for being that, and I won't because that would be disingenuous. A Timber X doesn't need stiff suspension because it's a STOL bird that's also capable of 3D. It needs an articulating suspension because it can absorb impacts in rougher landings. So I'm going to give it a pass here because it would be absolutely stupid of me to say that it fails at what it was obviously intended to do. So it does pass our stiff suspension checkpoint even though the suspension is not stiff. I hope this explanation makes sense. No, I'm not shilling for Horizon. I'm just trying to make this crescent moon-shaped airplane fit into the square hole, which is apparently where everything goes, into the square hole. The gear are lightweight, however, the gear springs are heavier than they were originally.
So close.
This is because they're the twin timber style spring, which is basically unbreakable, short of taking a pair of bolt cutters to them or flying them at full speed into a fence or something, so the Timber X passes here as well. And our final checkpoint looks for low maintenance. Since I had to go out of my way to land like crap to get the plane to even show a hint of damage, I'm gonna say that they require low maintenance and that they pass here. And hey, if you ever bend the gear strut like I did, it's a super easy fix with a pair of pliers. That's why you maintain stuff. Stuff get broke, stuff need maintain. That's how it be. The Timber X really do be getting that 5 out of 5 again. And no, it doesn't make me a Horizon shill to demonstrate the pitfalls of landing poorly. They're airplanes, they're not monster trucks. You can't reasonably expect something to never get damaged or show any signs of stress when you insist on slamming it in as hard as you can. The floats are optional, so I'll go over them but not give them a score, because this isn't a float-only plane. They're the same floats that the Timber Evo and Twin Timber use, which means that they're durable, easy to set up, inexpensive, and not hard to install either. I cut my teeth in model aviation flying from lakes, and I really miss doing it. So whenever I get a chance to fly a plane like this off the water, I always make sure to include a lot of float flying footage. Something to note for those of you who do fly off water, the floats change how the plane handles in the air. Most importantly, they make it feel like the center of gravity shifted aft, making it much more pitch sensitive than it would normally be with wheels. You can use this to your advantage to make some sick flips and spins that you can't do with the wheels. You can also crash a bit easier if you aren't prepared for the pitch sensitivity. Your flap settings will change a bit with floats. You may need to add some more pitch down trim on the elevators to compensate. Just a heads up if you didn't know that already. Moving on, let's cover the fit and finish of the Timber X Evolution. It features decals instead of stickers, and they weren't peeling up regardless of how aggressive I flew the plane, passing this checkpoint. The linkages appeared to be high quality to me, featuring the same thick metal push rods and plastic clevises from the original Timber X. Some of you might think plastic clevises, yuck! And I might agree with you if not for the fact that my first Timber X was flown pretty hard too, and I never had a single issue with the stock linkages at any point. I flew that plane at least 400 times, and the foam was wearing out faster than the linkages were, so I'll say it definitely passes here. My original Night Timber ate crap quite a few times, and it always came through and was flyable again afterward, so I suspect that the EPO foam used in the Timber X Evolution here is no different, and it'll pass this checkpoint easily. The only area of paint that I saw on the entire airframe was the black anti-reflective spot on the front of the nose in front of the canopy. This is actually one of the few times that I don't mind a plane having very little or no paint at all. The Timber X is already flying a relatively highly loaded stubby wing, and anything that'll help keep that weight down is gonna make it fly better. The foam looked pristine across the board, even with this being a test unit that Horizon had already done a bunch of flights with before I even got a chance to look at it, which also passes this next checkpoint. The plane is pretty easy to assemble now that it features the same quick connect plugs that you might be used to from the Timber Evolution. You do need to plug in the wing LEDs separately, but it's much easier to do than plugging literally every wire in every single time you put the plane together, absolutely passing this metric. It does feature CA-style hinges, which seem to work very well, no matter what I did to the plane or how aggressive I flew it, passing again, which gives the Timber X Evolution a 5 out of 5 in the fit and finish category. Moving on to our final section, which is Avionics and Lighting, the Timber X features upgraded metal-geared servos that are fast and precise. This is awesome, because I used to have to replace all of the servos in my E-flite airplanes before flying them. I no longer feel compelled to do this. The new version 2 servos they've been shipping over the past 2 years have made a huge difference in quality. If you've been around Two Brothers since we started, you'd know what I'm talking about. I was very critical of the factory servos in E-flite planes, and I always removed them and complained about them in favor of installing upgraded units. These new metal servos are significantly better, and it's not worth the money to get a small performance increase anymore. I didn't notice any ESC overheating issues at all, though the motor did get quite warm flying the way I did here, and I almost burned myself touching it accidentally. But you can't tell whether a motor is overheating by whether it's too hot to touch. As far as I can see, it performed flawlessly in both regards. The new motor mount is quite nice too, all but ensuring that you'll never break the mount, only the propeller. The battery positioning also got a significant upgrade in the new Timber X, with the ability to push the battery further back than you could before. I actually had to make a custom mod to the Timber fuselage to get it this far back. Now it's a stock option. You almost don't even need the tail weight. In fact, I would suggest that you're probably fine leaving it out entirely, though you may want to experiment and find what works best for you. The Timber X Evolution earns a 5 out of 5 here. earning an overall score of 25 out of 25. And I was dreading this being so good because it's knocked everything out of the park, which tends to make the Horizon haters come out of the woodwork and complain that I'm a Horizon fanboy for just sticking to the review metrics and not making up stuff to complain about. It's very rare that any airplane that I fly hits all of the review criteria that I'm using, and every one of them that has hit a perfect score has been a Horizon plane so far.
Hey!
Holy sh! I did it! I f***ed it! Holy f***! That was awesome!
Regardless of your opinion of the company, they do listen to the community, and they do improve their airplanes based on our feedback. It takes time, but it eventually happens, and this bird is proof of that. I have a special place in my heart for the Timber X. I learned to fly 3D with it, and while I've almost outgrown it as a pilot, I still enjoy flying it because it does what almost nothing else does. It flies 3D pretty well, and it flies short takeoffs and landings acceptably well too. It's a jack of all trades, but master of none, and the scoring should not be taken as, "Oh my god, I love me some timbers," because while I do love me some timbers, if it didn't meet the scoring metrics that we use, then I wouldn't have given it the score that it got. That's why I use this review system, because it's a system that I can't just fudge to make something look better than it is. If it doesn't have good hinges, I'm gonna call it out. If it has crappy paint, I'm gonna mention it. If it passes the scoring, then I say so. But I try to keep the editorializing to a minimum, because while it's nice to help sell planes and make money doing it, my primary mission is to inform you guys of what the planes can do, what you can do with them, and whether they're worth buying, not just making affiliate dollars. But if you do choose to support what we do here by buying from our links, know that we really appreciate you, because your support means that what we do matters. And in this world of ours, it's nice to feel like you matter to somebody. So thank you, both Liz and I really appreciate you guys. And I also wanted to say thank you to our channel members on twobrosrc.com/supporters, including our mega fans Sarasota RC Squadron, Michael Smith, JR Man, and Todd, and our ultra fans Seahawk92 and TBRC Fan. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for helping us make this channel a sustainable reality. So, how about them upgrades? What actually changed? First up, no more bottom loader. You hated it. I hated it. Everyone hated it. Listen guys, I'm a top, not a bottom. I want to load my batteries from the top, and now I can. Second, the plate that the gear struts connect to in the fuselage was enlarged and improved to help spread impact force throughout the plane, and the gear springs were enlarged and significantly thickened. You are never going to break a spring again, or I'm pretty sure that you won't. You might bend a gear strut like I did, but you won't break a gear spring. How do I know? Because I made a point to land really bad, as you guys saw, bottomed out the gear, and only managed to bend the bottom part of the right strut. The new springs are styled after the twin timber, and you really gotta be landing hard to make something bad happen. Contrary to what some people believe, airplanes are not monster trucks and they don't like being abused. Improve your landings and you won't break stuff. True story. Third, the motor mount, propeller adapter, and ESC were all significantly improved. The new motor is bolted onto the front of the new mount, and the prop adapter is a bolt-on type rather than the old collet style mount. I really wish I'd been filming a few years ago when I dead sticked my Timber X from 40 feet in the air after the prop shut off in a hover. That pretty much can't ever happen on the Evolution with the new bolt-on prop adapter. The new ESC is a 70 amp Avionics Light, which has 10 amps of additional headroom compared to the old 60 amp unit that it used to ship with, which also tended to run a little warm. But this one doesn't even break a sweat. That's what extra headroom will get you. It still swings a 13x4 propeller, which gives it plenty of low-end thrust, which is basically what you're looking for with a 3D plane. Fourth, as I mentioned earlier, the servos were 100% upgraded. I know this for a fact because I used to rip the factory servos out of every single one of my E-flite planes that I'd bought, mostly because they just weren't as good as they are now. If you've been around the channel for a long time, you'd know what I'm talking about. No, it's not because Horizon sends me these planes, it's because they're objectively better, and I choose to believe it's because I complained a lot about them, and Horizon does listen. But with a company their size, it's like that old saying goes, it takes a lot of water to turn an aircraft carrier around. I can't think of a single E-flite servo that I've had to replace in recent releases because they've definitely improved, and it shows in how this plane handles. Alright, so to wrap up this vid, let's cover the setup that I'm flying here. It's nothing special, let me warn you. Just 150 travel up and down on all servos with full span ailerons enabled. If you don't know how to do that, you can follow the manual to enable them the official way. It's not difficult at all to do, but if you want to do it my way, you can use a 2-flap, 1 aileron configuration. Take the flaps off the Y lead, which you have to do following the manual's guide anyhow, and run the 2 flaps to 2 separate channels after you unlock the receiver. Yes, you can plug the lights into the bind port. That's a super common question. That's actually where I put all of my lights, generally speaking. To make it super simple, just use the setup file on our Discord server if you have an IX or NX radio. If you want to know how to set up full span ailerons the way I did it, though, it's a simple mix contained within the file itself, but in the interests of full disclosure, I screen recorded my iX20 so that you can walk through the process with me if you'd rather just do it yourself. So here it is. From the main menu of your transmitter, go into your aircraft type and set the aircraft type to 1 aileron, 2 flaps. Head back to servo settings and make sure that all the servos are set to 150 travel, up and down. You will notice that I had to set the rudder to 130 on one side because it was hitting the elevator. Otherwise, 150 all the way. To set up full span ailerons, go into your mixes and create a new mix. It'll be a standard mix of the aileron system to the left flap channel. Spectrum works with multiple servos of a specific type, like dual flap servos, by using a concept that they call back mixing. This means that if you mix to the right flap channel, both flap servos will move in the same direction. But if you mix to the left flap channel, they move differentially, like ailerons. Set the rate to -100 and -100 on both sides of the mix. The offset should be set to 0, and set it to whatever switch you prefer to use. I use D2 on my iX20 SE, but I never actually bother turning it off because I'm just used to it by this point. That's the gist of this entire setup. If you need help with this, or if you don't understand, hop on Discord via the link below and we will happily walk you through it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys again soon with another surprise.